this entitled aunt wants to completely control her niece's life. This becomes most apparent when she refuses to let her niece become a doctor for this one shocking reason. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. My mum and I were in a walk-in clinic because I had a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 Fahrenheit. But other than that, and feeling a bit nauseous, I felt fine. It wasn't that crowded because it was a school day, and I had the opportunity to miss school because it was still 8th grade. There were around 5 to 7 people waiting in front of me, so I sat in the corner and took out my drawing tablet to finish an art piece I've been working on for a commission. I had my headphones in and was totally unbothered for 30 minutes. In the span of 30 minutes, 2 other families came in line, sat down, and I didn't even notice them. Even though it is a walk-in clinic, they might still give you an approximate time in which you have to wait, usually pretty accurate. And ours was 1.5 hours. There were a couple of stores beside the walk-in clinic, and my mum decided to check them out and to call her when it's been 1 hour and 15 minutes. I agreed and stayed in the waiting room by myself. 50 minutes go by, and this overly loud couple and 2 children decide to sit right next to me. At first, I tried to ignore them, but I didn't want to move to a different seat because the older of the 2 children was watching over my shoulder. I'm fine with that. He wasn't bothering me and even politely asked if he can watch when they first sat down. Of course, I said yes, but when I finished my commission and started texting the buyer, he was uninterested and started bothering his younger sister. The couple was on their phones and seemed annoyed when their older son got uninterested in me. At this time, I had my headphones out, waiting and hoping to get called in a bit earlier. The entitled parent came over to me, watched me text the buyer for a couple seconds, then spotted my drawing tablet. Without even bothering to ask, she went to grab for it. I quickly grabbed it because it was a Wacom Studio Mobile Pro, which means it does not require a laptop to use, but it costs $2,000. I asked her to please not touch it because it's extremely expensive and I bought it with my own money. I am a shy-ish kid, but I stand up for myself and don't take any crap. The mum almost screams at me that her son needs to try it out. The son looks extremely uncomfortable. Her wife is ignoring the situation. I tell her again, this is $2,000 and I am not going to let a 6-year-old play on it. I have a 5-year-old sister myself and I only let her use it when I'm supervising her. And even then, she just colors in simple sketches that I drew for her, and only now she finally knows how to use it. It took her 3 weeks even with my help to understand the hotkeys and how different it is to paper. I told the mum that I have paper and pencil crayons in my bag if he wants to use them, to go ahead. Without hesitation, she tries taking the drawing tablet again. She's around 5'7", and I feel claustrophobic with her even staring at me. Some people have noticed now, and they're giving her weird looks. I can't even stand up without throwing up now, so I can't fight back. But I have an idea. I stop struggling, and EP is looking at me with this grin on her face. She turns around to give the tablet to her son to try out. When I stand up, my stomach twisted and I stepped closer to the EP and throw up right on her back. She manages to jump away in time with the tablet on a chair, but not fast enough to not get anything on her back. Now her wife is getting up to say something while EP runs to the bathroom, but a bystander comes over to take the tablet away from them, give it to me and yell at the EP. He is around 6 foot and extremely threatening to them. I leave to move to another seat and put my headphones in as quickly as possible, call my mother and tell her to come over here now. She does, but not before the entitled parent gets kicked out. I didn't hear the conversation between the bystander and the entitled parent, but I know it ended with her getting kicked out. I sometimes think back in this day and wonder if I should have done something else, but the end result was perfect, so I don't think too much about it. This is definitely an entitled parent story, but it's got that twist of a petty revenge. The hero of our story definitely has an extra reason to be cautious. She's using the tablet for commission work that she's doing, so it's not just a piece of equipment that she's using for fun, it's actually her job. Yes, she was only 13, and maybe she wasn't making a lot, but the device cost $2,000, which is a lot for a 13-year-old. It's painful to watch when an entitled parent preys on somebody who's vulnerable. In this case, she was sick. But I guess what the entitled parent thought was their advantage eventually turned against them. The context. I am 22 years old and my cousin, EC, is about 16. This argument happened when I was 20, so my entitled cousin was only 14 during the time. Her mother will be EM, obviously. EM is my aunt's daughter, by the way, so this also makes her my cousin. Her mother has also done some pretty awful things to me and siblings, but EM is less underhanded and in your face about the things she does. The way EM is, whenever I say something, she will twist and turn facts to make it seem like I'm dumb and don't know what I'm talking about. Example, when I was diagnosed with ulcers and IBS, I was explaining it to my grandmother. Entitled Mother chimes in with, "Well, I have both those problems and I never had those symptoms." Problems with acid and cramping in my lower stomach. "Are you sure the doctor was right?" Even though I had never heard of her having ulcers or IBS until that point, and this was someone I saw nearly every day. Or she'll act nasty with my blind sister. Whenever my sister will get into a conversation with her, EM will sneak out of the room so my sister is just left there, talking with herself. It really hurts her feelings, and she's done this many times, including at my grandfather's funeral. This side of my mother's family has always treated us differently, as if we're below them. I've always assumed that it was because my mother and my aunt do not share the same father. But oddly enough, my aunt's father, who I consider to be my grandfather and is the one who passed away, has raised my mum since she was 3 years old and never once treated any of us differently. So I'm not sure what influenced them to treat our branch of the family like it's infected with termites. Even my grandmother was showing bias time to time when it comes to my mother versus her sister, or my siblings versus my aunt's children. But I'm more forgiving towards her because she's not trying to be malicious in any way, and she does still care deeply for us. I was one of those kids that didn't know what they wanted to do after high school. It also didn't help that when I left high school due to personal reasons and got my GED instead, so I didn't get that talk with the teacher who really pushed you towards college or the chance for scholarships. But as I got older and started thinking more about my life, I decided that I wanted to do something with it that actually mattered. So I decided I wanted to be a doctor. Well, a medical examiner, but I need to be an MD before I can start a fellowship to be a medical examiner. It's a very long process with a lot of schooling. I excitedly told my grandmother while EM and EC were at her house. I regret saying anything. But EC was wanting to go and be a doctor. Alright. I was wanting to be the first doctor in the family though. Okay, well, you're only like 14, so I can't really wait for you to start college. I was pretty annoyed that this was even being made into a big deal, and I was hoping that maybe it was just them joking. They were dead serious. You realize you have to work with blood and stuff as a doctor, right? Are you even sure you have the stomach for it? EC would be an excellent doctor. Obviously you have to work with blood as a doctor. I wouldn't be planning on going to school for it if I wasn't sure. But I want to be the first doctor in the family. Well, you can be the first doctor on your side of the family that I'm not related to. Why does it even matter? Because I want to be the first doctor on both sides of the family. Well, I can't help that. I didn't get a response after that, but the mocking got worse. They constantly wanted to know how I was doing in my classes, and then if I said I was struggling or something, EM would just jump in and boast about her child was great in that area. Her child was making straight A's, and she knew her child was going to be a doctor first. I saw them about every single day, so I was put down every single day. Eventually, my grandmother told me maybe I should stick to a job in art since I like to draw. That made me more upset. But EM and EC were around her way more than I was, so she probably got an earful on the subject. She assumed I was going to fail college, which made me both angry and upset that something this tiny was being turned into a rivalry, all because I wanted a good job I could support myself on. Joke's on them, I guess, considering I just ended fall class with a 4.0. This continued the remaining bit of the last 2 years I lived there. It happened every day no matter what, even on holidays. There were times EM would even text my mum to brag about EC. Soon she bragged about all the things EC got to do that I didn't get to do. Go to parties with friends, go to homecomings, and then she got invited to prom by an older classmate. This was bragged about for 2 months and was thrown in my face at every opportunity. Why? I left high school to get a GED. One of my regrets is that I never got to attend prom. And guess who they asked to do EC's makeup whenever she got a dance to go to? Me. Being too afraid to say no because of how nasty they are, I had to sit there doing her makeup, listening to EM brag about EC's dress, perfect grades, how fun of a night she was going to have, blah blah blah. Then EC would ask me how I felt not being able to go to school dances, blah blah. I felt a little defeated during this time in my life because I felt like EC had accomplished more than me. This was a dumb way of thinking, considering that proms and wild parties aren't going to do anything for you in the long term of your life, and I feel much better now. I now live about a day, maybe 2, drive away from them, in a completely different state. Every so often, they'll call, and recently, EM told me EC was already taking college classes. She's 16 and in 10th grade, but somehow taking college basics. When you're in the 11th grade, the high school does allow you to take college basics to prepare you for it, but they do not offer anything below that grade. So she flat out lied to make it seem like I'm still in competition with her daughter. I don't really care which one of us becomes a doctor first. I don't see why that is a big issue. I also don't know why these two are acting like little kids who want to be the first one to comment first on a YouTube video. Also, I don't blame EC for this. I'm hoping she grows out of this behavior, and I wish her luck in the medical field. I also hope that in her adult years, we can have the loving cousin bond. Her mother, however, I want nothing more to do with. When I first moved to Switzerland, my mother worked really hard to make some friends, and one of her closest friends was a couple with 2 kids. One was 6 and the other was 4. They came over quite often, and usually brought their kids. I could avoid them pretty easily by curling up on the couch and going to my room. My mum knows about my fear, so she was always pretty okay with me avoiding them. Then we started getting problems. I was a freshman in high school, and the parents asked me to babysit their kids for a night while they went out to dinner. I politely explained that no, I really didn't want to, and told them about my fear. They were kind of annoyed, but found another sitter for the night. Not even 2 weeks later, they asked me to babysit again, and I declined, telling the same thing I had said last time. The mum was considerably more angry, but left it alone. This continued for a month or 2, them asking me to babysit and me declining, for all the reasons above. Then, sometime in March, the mum is over with my mum, and they are talking about going out for lunch. The kids were in the game room where I kept my computer and PS4 and stuff, which was nice because they were out of the way. EM is the entitled mum, M is my mum, and me is me. Would you please look after the kids while me and your mother go out for lunch? She gets very panicky about kids. She really shouldn't. Why don't you bring them along? She's in high school. She should be over this dumb fear by now. Look, I've explained this multiple times now. You owe this to me. Look, I'll pay you for it. $5. We'll be gone for 2 or 3 hours. Don't be so rude. You've always used that same excuse. You can bring the kids with us. I'm sure they'll have fun. No, she needs to do this for me. She is always such a brat about this and never does anything for me or my kids. I just want 2 hours. That's not much to ask. For the last time, no. Why don't we just have lunch here then? We can make coffee. I can heat up the pastries I have in the fridge. Okay, fine. Whatever. Will you at least watch them while I run to the store with your mum so we can get more coffee mix? That sounds fine. We'll be 30 minutes, okay, honey? Yeah, okay. At this point, I just want to appease her and hope that the kids will just shut up and stay in the game room. Thank you so much. So they go off, do their thing, then it's 45 minutes and I'm feeling a little panicky when my mum calls. She says she's coming home. I can barely hear her. She's talking over her car speaker and I can hear EM pretty much screaming in the background. My mum was ticked off. Apparently, EM had taken her out to the store and offered to drive back, only to take my mum to a fancy restaurant and say they had a reservation. When my mum reminded her of me at home, EM started getting annoyed and said that I needed to get over my fear and that I had to babysit her kids because of all the times I had turned her down. EM openly admitted that she had made lunch reservations and manicure appointments at a nail salon nearby. She was going to leave me with her kids for 3 or 4 hours without telling me, without leaving them food, and without any prior warning, even when I had said no. So my mum dragged her back to the car, drove back to our house, kicked her and her kids out, and never invited her over ever again. Now, see, that's a good mum. You can tell earlier, she's a bit of a people pleaser and she kind of wants everyone to be happy. But when she can see that this new friend of hers doesn't care about her daughter whatsoever, tries to make the daughter look like the bad guy for not wanting to babysit, something must have snapped in the mum, and her number one priority was taking care of her daughter. Submit your story to be read on the channel at voiceyherestories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.